Unit 2F. Adventure. Reading Lost at Sea. Disaster, an event causing great harm, damage, or suffering. Rescue to help someone or something out of a dangerous, harmful, or unpleasant situation. Nightmare, a very upsetting and frightening dream. Life jacket, a piece of equipment that help you float if you fall into water. Work in pairs. Look at the photos. What do you think the text is about? Choose from headlines A, B, and C. A. Tourists fishing trip disaster. B. How to protect sea creatures. C. Fish rescue sailors. 2. Read the first paragraph of the test. Did you choose correctly in exercise 1? How do you know? Now look at this paragraph. You can see some phrases. Turned into a nightmare. During a fishing trip. Their boat sank. So, a tourist's fishing trip disaster is a correct answer. 3. Read the reading strategy. Then read the text, focusing on each gap and thinking about what might happen next. When you do a task with great sentences in narrative text, look carefully at the sentence before each gap and think about what is likely to happen next. Then look at the options and see which of the sentences matches your ideas. Finally, check that the text reads smoothly with your chosen sentence in place. Match sentences A, F with gaps 1 to 5 in the text. There is one extra sentence. Do any of the sentences match your ideas from exercise 3? The weather wasn't brilliant that day, but Dan had caught a huge fish. He was trying to pull it onto the boat when the captain realized water was coming into the cabin. The boat was sinking fast. The captain used his radio to send a message for help. Then he shouted, "Jump out!" They were about 15 kilometers from land. So they did, and a few minutes later, the boat disappeared under the waves. The answer is 1D. The captain said that help was coming. The weather was now awful, but they were wearing life jackets. After an hour, the captain and Suskies lost each other, and there was no sign of rescue. They were both sinking the same terrifying thought, sharks. So Dan and Kate started to swim as fast as they could towards land. 2A. A helicopter appeared, but nobody saw Dan and Kate in the water. Day turned to night and the Suskies swam for 14 hours. Finally, they saw some cliffs. They were near land. There were dangerous sharp rocks. By now, they were exhausted. Eventually, they reached a sandy beach. But they couldn't get out of the water here. The answer is 3F. And, out of water at last, they lay down and rested. 4E. Then they found town and picked some green bananas. Finally, they met a young farm worker. He also gave them some tragic news: the captain was lost at sea. After a few days in hospital, Dan and Kate were fine. Their story had another happy ending. A rescue boat found the captain after 23 hours in the water. He gave them water and food, and stayed with them until the police arrived. The answer is 5C. 5. Read the text again. Are the sentences true or false? Write T or F. 1. Dan was the first person to see that there was a problem with the boat. This sentence is false. The captain realized water was coming into the cabin. Two, the boat sank before Dan and Kate could jump into the water. This sentence is false again. So they did, and a few minutes later, the boat disappeared under the waves. 3. A helicopter saw Dan and Kate in the sea, but it couldn't rescue them. This sentence is false. A helicopter appeared, but nobody saw Dan and Kate in the water. 4. When Dan and Kate reached land, they can't get out of the water at first. This sentence is true. But they couldn't get out of the water here. 5. There was nobody on the beach when Dan and Kate got out of the sea. This sentence is true. Then they found a town, and picked some green. 7. Vocabulary match the extreme adjectives highlighted in the text with the simpler adjectives below. Very bad. Awful. Very good. Brilliant. Very big. Huge. Very sad. Tragic. Very frightening. Terrifying. Very tired. Exhausted. Exercise 8. Take turns to ask and answer the question in pairs. 1. What is the weather like that day? The weather wasn't brilliant that day. 2. What were you doing? I was trying to pull a huge fish onto the boat. 3. What happened to the boat? The boat sank fast. 4. Why did you started swimming? We started swimming because we were both thinking the same terrifying thought sharks. 5. How did you feel? I felt exhausted. 6. How did you reach the land safety? I found a town and met a young farm worker.